Welcome everyone to another episode of Retro Wrestling Reviews. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we look back at World Class Championship Wrestling's January 2nd, 1982 episode. This is the first TV episode of World Class that is available on the WWE Network. This episode was taped on December 20th, 1981 at the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas. Gene Goodson is joined by Jose Lothario on commentary. The first match on the show is Tom Boogaloo Shaft beating Carlos Zapata with a jumping hip attack. This wasn't a very long match. It was actually very, very short. They mostly talked about Shaft's tough man background. He was in a lot of those tough man competitions, so they talked about that a bit. And I think that was really the highlight of this match itself. Shaft is very... there's only so much he does in a match, and he pretty much, headbutts. And actually does do the jumping hip attack, so there's actually something that he does do in the match. That was then followed by Big Daddy Bundy beating the Monk after a bear hug turned into a slam for the pin. Bundy was actually wearing jeans with a string tying them up. I think I've only seen that I've seen that recently with a bartender using a string as her belt to keep her pants from falling. I thought that was very weird, but she said it works, and it must have worked for Bundy because his pants didn't fall off during this match. They also mentioned that Bundy is a protege of Jose Lothario. Lothario compared Bundy's strength to that of Andre the Giant. Bundy dominated most of this match, and it was pretty short. That was then followed by Gene Goodson interviewing Tom Boogaloo Shaft. Again, he talked about winning tough man competitions and how that prepared him for wrestling. He vows to beat Arman Hussein and the Great Kabuki. Very short interview segment. That was then followed by Kevin and Kerry Von Erich getting interviewed by Gene Goodson, with Kevin talking about his recent trip wrestling in Atlanta and getting some worldwide exposure. Kerry then started talking about their upcoming tag match against Arman Hussein and Killer Tim Brooks. Kevin then interrupts him and claims that Kerry's in tremendous shape because he has been wrestling alligators. They quickly switched to talking about Kabuki spitting mist at their father Fritz Von Erich's eyes, and how that has caused Fritz to have eye problems. I think he lost, according to the story, was that he lost 50% of his vision, 40 or 50% of his vision, depending on when they were talking about it. I think at this point in time it was somewhere in that range. That was then followed by the Great Kabuki beating Jesse Relampago Leon after a middle rope fist drop. Gary Hart accompanied Kabuki. This was the best match on the show. Kabuki's pre-match ritual is always awesome. What he basically does is he's taking off his wardrobe, his outfit, his mask. He has a samurai mask on. It's a samurai outfit. Takes that all off. Hands over his weapons to Gary Hart, and then he spins around and spits mist into his up in the air and into his hands, and that's part of the whole Kabuki. What he does to draw everyone's attention and makes them think he's something out of this world. I think it's pretty awesome. Relampago Leon used his athleticism and speed in this match, which made this a very fun match whenever he was on offense. Kabuki used a lot of nerve holds and a variety of kicks when he was on offense. But the thing is, Kabuki is very good. At this point in time, he's still very good, very athletic. So this was a fun match. Kabuki continued to attack Relampago Leon after the match, and that led to Kerry Von Erich running out and making the save. Gary Hart and referee David Manning had to keep both separated, but that was really the highlight of this show. The whole Kabuki Von Erich's feud, and it continued on this show, really strong. I thought this was a really fun match. That was then followed by the main event of Kerry and Kevin Von Erich beating Arman Hussein and Killer Tim Brooks, who were at the time the U.S. Tag Team Champions within this territory. They won the match when Killer Tim Brooks was attempting to catapult Kerry Von Erich from one corner to the other. Only when he bent down to try to catapult Kerry, Kevin climbed up to the top rope and caught Brooks with a sunset flip for the pin. This was a pretty good wild brawl. It had that extra heat being that the Von Erichs were involved. Before the match, and this is actually before all of his matches, Hussein does a ceremony where he does a camel walk around the ring. Everyone has to step outside the ring as he does this. There's always like people just interacting and like getting upset that he's doing it. It riles up the crowd, who's very pro-American. And this, I guess, is something that's anti-American at this point in time in 1981. There are two, in 1981, 82, early 80s, there are two referees in this match. And Jose Lothario said that the reason there were two referees in this match is the NWA requested this to be the case because they needed some sort of order in a tag team match involving these four men. I thought this was a good match. Like I said, a wild brawl. I'm kind of up and down on Brooks just because there's moments where he looks really good, then there's moments where he just, he's very he sticks to a very basic form of what he does in the ring, which, I think that later on became more of his what he was more known for, just a very more of a brawler type. But this match really suited him because it was really just a brawl. I think the Von Erichs really, this is what makes it so great, is that the Von Erichs are able to like feed off the energy of the crowd, and the crowd gets everything going, and you get the Von Erichs just going in and out of the ring. And of course, Hussein and Brooks trying to cheat their way to victory, but the Von Erichs, the heroes, get the big win as the show closes. The final, as the show is ending, Goodson mentions that next week's show will have Kerry Von Erich versus the Great Kabuki, and Jose Lothario will also be wrestling. That is something to look forward to. Kerry versus Kabuki is a match that they really did a good job building up to. And it does actually end up living up to its expectations, because I thought it was a really good match. And we will talk about it on the next episode. But again, I thought this show was excellent. The Kabuki versus Relampago Leon and the tag main event were good. I highly recommend watching the Kabuki Relampago Leon match. I think what really helps that match is that Relampago Leon comes from a lucha libre background, since him being Mexican and being from that area. A lot of the guys who were maybe born in Texas or were living in Texas would still migrate back and forth between Texas and northern Mexico. So they kind of developed a reputation of being able to work lucha and also the American style that was used in that territory at that time. So, and Leon really was very good at fitting into both styles and blending them into his matches, especially as a guy who's there just to like get over the stars. That's really what his role was. It was very interesting to see the babyface version of King Kong Bundy. The crowd was really into every match, even the matches I wasn't a big fan of, which really helped this show. But like I said, there's two matches that close this out that are really good. So I definitely recommend people watching this because it's a good show, especially if you want to watch everything. Best way to know what's good and what's bad is to kind of have a template of what qualifies as that. And if you're only watching the good stuff, then you don't really know what really is bad, because something that you think is bad might actually not be the worst thing in the world. And that's why I recommend you watch as much. If you're going to be a wrestling fan and you plan on watching everything, you better watch the bad stuff, because that way you know what the good stuff is. Be sure to subscribe to the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel, where we'll have more wrestling show reviews as well as the Lucha World podcast and other content available. Also, check out all my websites, retrowrestling.com and luchaworld.com. And for added content, be sure to visit patreon.com/luchaworld. Thanks again, everyone, and we will be back again soon.